Welcome to Module 3 of the program. Here we will talk about the determination of nitrogen in the soil. Improving nitrogen fertilizers saves fertilizer costs and reduces water contamination by nitrate. In this lesson, we will learn the basic principles for a correct diagnosis of the need for fertilization to optimize crop nutrition and avoid economic and environmental problems. The nitrogen balance assesses the supply of nitrogen by soil and demand for cultivation. It is one of the most accepted methods to quantify nitrogen dynamics in the floor plan system and simulates process of gains, losses, and transformations of the element in the system, as we see in the scheme. In many crops, soil mineral is one of the most important terms. As important step for a better nitrogen fertilization is the measurement of the nitrate content in the soil at the beginning of the cultivation. However, to most farmers, soil nitrate analysis does not compensate economically. Increased performance can be expected if precise fertilization recommendation strategies are developed to assess whether nitrogen balances are positive or negative. Plant growth is dictated by the limiting factor and not by total resource available. One nutrient alone cannot ensure the yield. The balance between the nutrients is essential to ensure yields according to the potential of the crops. Attached is the material where you can find more about Jevits barrel. What if there is too much nitrogen in plants? Well, we need to take into account 5 points. Saturating the soil with high nitrogen levels does not improve plant growth. Excess nitrogen causes fast foliage growth, so other plants' growth suffer. High nitrogen mixtures increase soil's mineral salts, so growth leaves can be burned. Extra nitrogen leaches out of the soil, causing groundwater pollution, and you can lose money. This is an example of the Guide for Integrated Nutrient Management. The example of the general guide, you will have it like a material attached to this module. Nitrogen requirements vary with cultivation and production. Nitrogen needs of different crops for typical production can be obtained in publications such as this guide, la Guía Práctica de la Fertilización Racional de los Cultivos en España. Nitrogen needs depends on species, variety, potential yield, and the quality of the harvest. Throughout the growing cycle, the needs are different. In winter, cereals, it is more important in the tillering stage and stem elongation, while in the tree crops, the needs are maximum during flowering and ripening of the fruits. This is just to clarify you that each country has its own guide. The form of nitrogen absorption by plants is mainly in nitric form, nitrate ion, and in ammoniacal form, ammonium ion. Most plants grow better if they have access to both. When both forms are present, the preference for one or the other will depend on the species, the development of the plant, its physiological state, and the properties of the soil. In most cases, the nitrate content in the soil is much higher than ammonium. You will find attached a video of the nitrogen absorption in plants. Soil analysis is a fundamental tool for determining the soil potential of a locality, region, or parcel. When it comes to soil fertility assessment, the term chemical soil analysis is inappropriate because what's being analyzed is not only the whole extent of the soil profile, but the material collected in its shallowest layers. Correct soil sampling is a major factor in soil fertility assessment, as it is impossible to analyze the entire volume and/or weight of the soil's arable layer. To achieve a good fertility test or diagnosis, we must correctly pass the following steps: field sampling, accurate chemical analysis, and interpretation of the data. Fertility diagnosis begins with taking a good soil sample. When and how often should soil sampling be performed? Well, it will depend on the purpose of the analysis. If the objective is to fertilize the crop, the sampling should be as close as possible to the planting date. If the objective is to know the evolution of the fertility of the plot, the sampling should always be carried out at the same time of the year. General recommendations are included here. Chemical analysis is the second step, and the methods to be used are sought to be simple, fast, and inexpensive. The extraction involves adding a chemical to the soil sample. The extraction releases nutrients that are absorbed into the soil particles. The end result when implementing the appropriate methodology is an indicator or an estimator of availability of a given nutrient. Once the soil sample has been analyzed, the laboratory informs us of the result. We could say that we have two groups of variables reported in a soil analysis: variables that estimate the availability of nutrients in the soil, and variables that estimate the productive quality of our soil. A widely used method for total nitrogen determination is Keldal. The method is based on the digestion and distillation of nitrogenous compounds from a soil sample at high temperatures. Soil analysis information needs to be interpreted to plan an improvement to the fertility of plots. Field trials establish relationship between each variable that estimates the availability of a nutrient and the response of a crop to the aggregate of a nutrient. We can see in Figure 1 that there are three zones or types of nutrient availability. In Zone 1, which corresponds to low relative yields related to low levels of nutrient in the soil. Here, the probability of response to the addition of a limiting nutrient is very high. In Zone 2, we approach the critical threshold that defines sufficiency. In Zone 3, the threshold has been exceeded. Some studies show that when the nitrogen dose is reduced by 50% and 75% compared to the 100% dose, the environmental impact produced by nitrous oxide emissions decreases considerably without losing productivity. Land-linked livestock farms can be a good example of a circular economy. For example, in Spain, in the case of a livestock region such as Galicia, it is estimated that an average of about 60 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare can be dispensed with. We can estimate nitrogen needs taking into account that the plot itself can provide based on the organic matter content of the soil, the previous crop, the presence of legume more than grasses, the type of use, the history and type of fertilizer, and the acidity. In summary, the nitrogen balance method allows to quantify the need for nitrogen of fertilizing. A fertilization plan is necessary. It is advisable to know the organic nitrogen in the soil as well as the nitrogen that is mineralized during the growing season. Soil assessments are necessary to develop fertilization strategies that enable the efficient use of nitrogen and minimize environmental risks. Successful sampling, soil analysis, and correct interpretation are required to achieve benefits. Thank you for listening.
The LIFE Libernitrate project has received funding from the LIFE programme of the European Union.